Welcome. Today is episode 11 of Threading the Needle with Bulldog Illustrated, and I'm here today meeting with my friend Dominique Holloman, who is on the UGA Alumni Association Board of Directors with me. And I was going to ask you today, what does it mean to you to be a graduate at the University of Georgia, because you have 4 degrees, undergrad, psychology and sociology, law, and a Master of Education in Sports Management.
Yes.
Wow.
So I know, right? I have to start this with a funny story. So when I graduated from high school, I was on my way to Tulane. I was like, Tulane's my school. My college counselor was like, are you sure? My parents were like, no. And I was like, no, I'm going to Tulane. So every time I see my former college counselor, she always reminds me of how I wasn't going to go to Georgia and how it has just become such a huge part of my life. And so being a Georgia grad for me is just having connection. Like, I never imagined the experience that I had, or the friends that I have made, or even the connections that I've made with you all now as a member of the Alumni Association board. Like, my life is just UGA. Like, that's what people call it. They're like, it's Miss UGA, it's Miss Black UGA. Like, so it's just a feeling of warm and community. So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
That's how I feel too. Explain your current profession. You are the Chief of Staff for House of Representative in Atlanta. So do you want to explain a day in the life?
So actually during the pandemic, I accepted a new role. So we'll talk about both because they still fit together. So recently, I was Chief of Staff for State Representative William Boddie, Georgia House District 62. So that's South Fulton County and Douglas County. And he's also the Democratic whip in the House. So he's responsible for, making sure all the Dems are aligned and voting the way they should be voting according to the philosophies of the party. But after crossover day, I left and I'm now government affairs manager at MARTA. So I'm learning about transit and transportation and equity in transportation across the region. So still in that political sphere, but instead of focusing on 8,000 things, I now just get to focus on one thing, which I appreciate. Yeah.
Very much so. So I was going to ask you in Atlanta, so now it'll be transportation driven, I bet, but I was going to ask you what a challenge in Atlanta that you see, and then somewhere where we're successful.
Yes, transportation has always been at the top of my list. Like, if you have been stuck on 85 or 285 or 20, you know that transit and transportation is like Atlanta's biggest headache. Even getting to Athens, like I tell people, if you don't leave, like if you don't get past, Gwinnett by 3:30, it's no telling what time you'll get to Athens. So that's definitely been the biggest thing. And then I think one thing that Atlanta has done really well is just become a place for all groups. Like, I feel like anybody can come to Atlanta and have a chance at being successful. Anybody can come to Atlanta and find a community in which they belong. Beaufort Highway is a great example of that. Like, I don't think there are very many other cities with the kind of diversity that you find along Beaufort Highway. So that's one thing that I think Atlanta has done a great job of, and that I'm really proud of when I share that I'm from Atlanta.
That's awesome. So you are a leader outside of Georgia too, and outside of your role. You have been super active with Junior League. And then I also noticed 2019 class of Inspire Atlanta, which sounded super interesting. Describe a little bit about your, and then I saw another governmental type of council that you had participated on. Tell us about why you feel it's important to be active outside of just your career and your university.
Well, I've always been really big on being plugged into my community, whatever that community is. So whether it's my Georgia community or my professional community, but Junior League has been such a life changer for me. First of all, I always wanted to be a part of Junior League. I don't know why I didn't join when I was still in Athens, but I came back home to Atlanta after law school, and then life took over. Like, I got married and had a child and just got totally distracted. And then the opportunity to join Junior League came back around. I belong to the Junior League of Douglas County, which Douglas County is a little suburb right outside of Atlanta. And it's a much smaller league. It's a much smaller community. It has a small town feel. And I love that because the work that we do, you see the impact immediately. And you have like those closer connections with people. So we do a lot of work with the chamber. We do a lot of work with the school board, the city council. So it makes the effort that we put into the work tangible and easier to see, as opposed to a larger league. The Atlanta League does amazing things, but for me, it was just, I felt it would be hard for me to find a place in that. So I wanted to be, I'm in a much smaller league. And I actually just became president of my junior league June 1st. So I'm excited to lead us in a new direction. It's our 30th year, and we're looking at honoring our past while preparing for our future. So to be a leader at a time, a transition like that, is challenging, and sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed, but I'm excited to take our league to the next level and see how we can further improve lives in Douglas County. But just in general, to speak to the other things that I've done, like Inspire Atlanta or the Georgia Women's Policy Institute through the YWCA. One, I think it's important to remain connected to a group of women, because for the majority of my career, I've been in male-dominated industries, which can feel lonely. And it's hard to find women doing the same thing that you're doing, like when I was in athletics. So I was like, I gotta find a group of women that I can talk to and connect with. So that's why those types of programs appeal to me, but also too, because they help prepare you for leadership, whether that's philanthropic leadership or leadership in advocacy and policy making, which is what we did through the GWPI. So I think it's important to continue to, one, expand my own horizons, whether that's on a professional or personal level, continue to give back, and then, like I said, build that community of women.
Yes, I sort of was trained in my philanthropic early years. Straight out of college, I got involved in the YWCA board, and it was a powerhouse of very diverse women. And it was the best foundation for, finding my strengths and finding my ways to, be a good board member for the Alumni Association. Right. Yeah. But that's a fun foundation. We did a luncheon for years called Tribute to Women Leaders, and that was really a fun program. But like you, I always wanted to, and I was young right back, in your community. You need to find that foundation.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And then, of course, the amazing part is no matter what you do, you always find Georgia grads. So I love that.
Yep.
It's been fun to have like that community within that community. It's just like, you went to Georgia? Oh, yeah. So now we have like our own little subset, which is fun.
It is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would agree, like people giggle, like if you, for me, there's if you're Athens, St. Simon's, Georgia Bulldog, or a female entrepreneur, then you're like my, that's my peeps. So you brought tears to my eyes at the last In Real Life board meeting in February. You brought tears to most of the room. You were talking about participating in the College of Education being dedicated and named after Mary Frances Early, who is a pioneer music teacher, but also the first African-American graduate from the University of Georgia. And the College of Education is now named after her. And you came and gave a talk about that experience. Do you mind sharing again about how special that was?
Yes, I'm still like getting emotional thinking about it. I know when I shared my experience with you all, I talk a lot about making space for people and like really seeing them. And the reason why the renaming was so important was because, you know, for this academic year will be 60 years since the university has been desegregated, and to one, acknowledge what a hard experience that was for her and Charlene and Hamilton, but also to look back and see now we have almost 16,000 African American alumni of the university in 60 years, and to say, you know, we know that you all haven't had the best experience here. We know for some of you it has been painful. It was difficult, but you are a part of the fabric of this university. You are an important part of the history of this university. Your contributions to this university are important and you matter. And to see that message culminate in something like the renaming of the college education was such an emotional moment for me. It was so overwhelming for me, especially when I think about my parents who grew up in a segregated Atlanta, who were behind Mary Frances early in school, so they're not that much far apart in age from her, and how they shared their stories with me about how it felt to see Tech be desegregated, Georgia be desegregated. So to see that history come together was overwhelming too, because sometimes I think in our minds, we think that the civil rights movement was so much longer ago than it actually was, you know, and to have my mom say, well, I remember having to take the outside stairs at the Fox and go up to the balcony if I wanted to see something, or I remember riding in the back of the bus or having to drink out of these separate water fountains. And even hear Mary Frances' early stories about people not wanting to sit next to her in class or throwing things at her as she walked through campus. It's like, one, for me, with these 4 degrees, I can't help but to be so grateful and indebted to her, because without her courage and her sacrifice, like, she didn't have to come to UGA. She was doing great at Michigan pursuing her degree, but she made a conscious choice to open the door and make a change and be supportive of Charlene and Hamilton. And without that, like, it really wouldn't have been a me. You know, Georgia probably wouldn't have been an option for me if she hadn't decided to just stick it through. And she talks a lot about having to put steel in your back and bear down and walk through difficulties. So I'm just forever grateful to her. She came to the Capitol. I don't know if you know, before session was suspended, we brought her down to the Capitol. My former boss sponsored a resolution honoring her because of the renaming, and she got a standing ovation in the House and the Senate. And, you know, a lot of the representatives and senators talked about what a magical moment that was for them too, to be able to even recognize someone like that while they're still living. Because the other piece for me is that sometimes we just wait until people have passed and then we want to share about how impactful they are in our lives. So to be able to touch someone who's living history and just say, you know, thank you so much for doing what you did, like, that was an important part for me too. And I know the other thing that I spoke with you all about was how hard it is to be in these spaces sometimes, when we talk about, you know, you're the only Black person in the room, you're the only woman in the room. I know you can understand what that feels like sometimes, and how it can be lonely, it can feel burdensome and difficult. And so especially at Georgia and doing various activities, if I ever feel that way, then I remember, like, I'm not the first that's been the only one, right? And there are other parts of campus where somebody else will be the first. So to be in that line of brave men and women, outstanding men and women who are paving the way for other folks to come behind us, I just feel more than honored to do that. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you asking me about that, especially at a time like this where we're having such an acknowledgement of the fact that racism is real and that it has had tremendous impact on the Black community, whether that's the emotional aspect, the physical aspect, the mental aspect. I mean, we can just talk for days about the effects of stress on the body from racism, you know, or even health disparities, like, you know, there are more Black mothers who die in labor because of racism, or just racism in the workplace. So I also appreciate the fact that I feel like through the renaming, we're able to acknowledge on our campus that we weren't always in a good place, right? And we can be honest about that. And that's the first step, is recognizing that we haven't always been right. We haven't always done right, but there's always a chance to do right. And I think that's the message that I left with you all today. And I think that that's what we're seeing now. And that's what people are saying, like, now is the time to do right and be right.
The name of our show is Threading the Needle. So I think let's thread the needle for folks. How can we do more and do a better job making, having more empathy and understanding?
Well, I think one major thing that the university has done is establish the Black Alumni Affinity Group. We were the first affinity group, and I had the honor of being the inaugural president of the Black Alumni Leadership Council. And so that is amazing in and of itself, because we're able to be a bridge, one, to Black students who didn't have positive experiences but are proud to be Georgia graduates. And I think no matter what people's experience has been, we're always proud to say Georgia, right? Like, it's go Dogs, always. But to be able to say, okay, that might not have been great for you, but we want you to come back, and we want to love on you, and we want to show you what's going on campus now. We want you to be a part of this community. So I think one is participating in the events, because, you know, despite the fact that they're hosted by Black alumni, they're not just for Black alumni. Like, I think everybody has heard about our homecoming now, right? So I tell people, like, when you're on campus during homecoming, like, swing by Myers Quad and like join the party. The other important piece is making sure that students have the resources to remain on campus. We know that being a student at Georgia now has become increasingly financially challenging. And so we were so proud to establish the 1961 Club and endow our Black Alumni Scholarship. So we're able to provide that type of financial support to more students so that we keep those bright minds on campus. So I always encourage people to give a gift to the 1961 Club. We've made it so easy. You can give literally $19.61 one time. You can do a recurring gift. You can give $196.11, you know, or you can go all the way and give the actual 1961. But that's a great start, because when you are able to keep people in place through funding, that shows that you care about them, and it shows that you're invested in them, right? And that's the return that we want. We want these students to come to campus. We want them to feel welcome. We want them to blossom there, because we know that they're going to leave Georgia and do great things. And so we want to be invested in their legacy. And then I think another piece is supporting programming that tells stories. Like, we all have voices, we all have different experiences, but supporting, bringing performing art to campus, visual art to campus. Like, I know that the Parent Alumni Council does a lot of funding of student organizations on campus. So if people are sitting on those boards or giving to the parent association saying, you know, I want to make sure that my funding goes to support bringing these diverse voices and viewpoints to campus, because I think more than any other time in our lives, that 4 or 5 years that we spend on a college campus is the most that we will ever be exposed to other cultures, other voices, other races. And so it's really important that we spend time making sure that our students hear these other stories that are being told.
Yes, and I saw too, for the scholarship fund, that you can also do it in Mary Frances Early's honor right now too.
Yes, and so we have been encouraging that. We have been encouraging that as well, to give a gift in her honor. Yeah,
that's awesome. So we will encourage it too through Bulldog Illustrated as well, because I think it's so important. So I told you about my precious niece coming to Georgia. Yes. So class of 2024. What are some tips for these cute group coming? I mean, we talked about Yvette being on our board, who her daughter's coming. We've got some I think Meredith's niece is coming too. I mean,
yeah, I get so excited about Bulldog babies. I tell them, like, for me, Georgia was such an amazing experience because I got to do anything, like literally anything that you think you have an interest in. Like, there's a club at Georgia that you can do. There's some type of organization that you can join. So I tell them, just try it. Just try it, especially because the older we get, the more our lives become complicated. Sometimes we lose the ability to dabble in our curiosities. Right. But Georgia is a place that is like an emporium of curiosity. So I tell them, get engaged, get involved in as many things as you can. I feel confident that these three ladies will always be at the games, but I always encourage people, like, there's no experience like a Georgia game. Right. Like, nothing compares. So I'm like, go at least once, even if you don't like football, even if you don't like being outside in the heat, like, you just have to go just once, and then you're hooked. Because that's what happened to me. Like, I went to my first game, I was like, it's so hot, I'm so miserable, like, why did I do this? But you just can't stay away, it's so infectious. And then I think the other thing that I tell people is get off campus and explore Athens, because I don't just love UGA, I love Athens.
I do too.
It's such a cultural place, which I think a lot of people don't realize. They just associate it as a college town, but I'm like, no, it's an awesome town in and of itself.
The music history.
Yes, and the food.
Peter Dale, our beloved Georgia grad, has some amazing restaurants. You are right.
Yes, and so I tell them, like, just explore Athens too, because that becomes a part of your experience as well. I love Athens. It's my second home. People think I live there now, actually, because I'm there all the time. They're like, do you have a house here now? Are you here permanently? Like, no, not yet.
It's fun to stay involved. I think that's something we should encourage too.
Yes.
Get back involved with Georgia. There's so many ways to do it. So many ways to do it.
And so for the seniors, or fourth or fifth years, however they like to be called now, I do encourage that. I'm like, stay connected, stay involved. It's so easy, whether it's through Young Alumni or through your college. Like, there are avenues for you to maintain and deepen your relationship with the Bulldog Nation. Like, it doesn't just have to happen on a Saturday in the fall. It can happen 365 days of the year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in Athens, even like in the summertime when it's quieter.
Yes, when there's no traffic. Like, of course, like, compared to Atlanta, like, there's no traffic in Athens, but I especially like it in the summertime too. Yeah,
I do too. Well, I can't wait to see you in Athens soon. We've been doing our virtual board meetings, but I'm ready for an in real life. So I think it might be, fingers crossed, October.
Yes. I've told everyone, like, circle October 3rd on your calendar. That's when I will be making my in-person return. I might sneak up a little bit. Like, I can't stay out in Gore Vintage, right? So I need to go up and pick up some things. And some of the
food. Erie makes it so fun.
Yes. Yes. And then there's a couple of restaurants that have been calling my name. So I might sneak up over the summer and do, like, you know, curbside takeout or something.
All right, well, let me know if you do, because I keep sneaking up there too.
I definitely will. But for sure, yeah, October 3rd. I miss all of you all. I can't wait to, like, feel the Georgia spirit again.
I know, me too. And love you, and thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.